for those that don't know, a couple weeks ago, a group of people and I went out to Palestine on a group. The group was called Black Jerusalem, and we were traveling as 29 social impact leaders from around the country. For the most part, people of color. There were two persons who identified as white, and we were traveling also as an interfaith delegation. I use that word loosely, to the region in the Holy Land to understand how Blackness shows up, how color is viewed, seen, and experienced throughout the region of Israel, Palestine, West Bank, Gaza, etc. And we traveled all throughout the region. It was already a difficult trip that we were on because we were out there for almost 2 weeks. It was beautiful to grow with other Black and brown folks. It was beautiful to feel so welcomed in the Holy Land. It was very much a complex trip for me as a Christian, being in a space where the predominant, not just religious faiths, but cultural traditions also derived from religions that were and cultures that were not necessarily my own. And I think that a lot of American Christians don't realize that we have a culture, not just a religion, that religion creates a culture that we then think is just normal. And that's simply not the case and you realize that once you start traveling. We were already dealing with a lot, I will say, as Black people grappling with what we were seeing, what I would absolutely call a clear apartheid state in the West Bank, settler encampments of people losing their homes, being forced from their properties, the ways in which here in America we understand what Dr. King called the creative injustices, where it's truly systemic. It's like written into the law, and you kind of gotta dig a little bit to see why there's so much systemic poverty or systemic lack or low health outcomes and these sorts of things. You got to dig a little bit. We saw that all throughout the area, how Palestinians were really second-class citizens, and all that to say, the last day of our trip, the war broke out. And we ended up in a fairly dire situation that required our entire group to split up just to try to find safety and for people to get home. As a lot of you all know, when we saw that morning, it was morning for us. I know it was like the evening for y'all, but it was like first thing in the morning, Hamas started launching rockets into Israel from the Gaza Strip. And fortunately, we were in Haifa. We were on the northern end, which now I think is also a place of combat, given that Hezbollah is there on the Lebanon border. We kind of got stuck in the middle of it. That's the main airport in Israel. And that required us to go south, closer to a lot of the fighting and where the rockets were coming across. Of course, everyone talks about the Iron Dome. The Iron Dome is a defense network that Israel has to shoot down any rockets that are coming in. It has about a 90% success rate. That does mean that 10% of the rockets get through, and that's what I was thinking about mostly. Hamas that morning had said that it had launched 5,000 missiles. The Israeli Defense Force said that that Hamas had actually launched closer to 2,000. Regardless, whether it's 200 or 500 missiles that are in the margin of error, that's a lot. We ended up in a situation where we were, trying to get to the airport, going through military checkpoints. White privilege got us through the military checkpoint, which was really, really frustrating. We had two white persons on board, as I said. We sat them in the front of the bus. The police came on board, boarded our bus, preventing us from getting into the airport. And we're questioning some of the Muslim and brown folks on board. And when they saw the two white women in front, they let us pass. That got us to the airport. But once we got to the airport, that's where we started seeing the rockets. We saw them coming over. It was nighttime, so you could see them in the sky. We thought they were like shooting stars. Some of us thought they were like the airplane lights. But once you saw that they were moving in the way that they were moving, they were arcing, going up, arcing, coming down, you realize that those are not shooting stars. Those are not airplane lights. There's nothing mechanical like that. Those are rockets. And they were being shot in our direction. And it's a very jarring thing. And so a lot of I won't go into the details of many of the, I think, traumatizing things that many of the group went through in trying to evacuate from that area, and how many days it took for some of our people to get home. Many of them had to flee by land to Jordan to get across the border. But but we eventually got everybody home. And when I got back, you know, everybody here, people here, just talking out of both sides of their mouths, um, and I needed to just step back a bit. I was getting a lot of, I think, misplaced and um, challenging is a light way of saying it. I'm gonna say straight up disrespectful
Mm.
um, messages, DMs, etc. Mostly from my Jewish friends, um, and I was getting, um, you know, messages of support and just like, yo, X, I see you. You need something? Let me know. We're here for you. From most of my like leftist progressive folks.
Had you
Um,
said anything about it before getting any of those messages?
no, so while I was on the trip, I was asking myself this question of what do I post, if at all. One, there's a security issue with posting. I don't know that everyone understood that. Um, you can't you can't go into Israel and not know that everything's being tracked. Everything you're doing is being tracked. They know who you are before you get there. We knew that from jump. And I'm not saying that to like disparage Israel. I'm saying that because that's simply the truth. We were also traveling with a well-known Palestinian social justice leader named Rami Nashashibi. The Nashashibis are a long-term family that has hundreds of years history in Palestine. They have homes and land in Sheikh Jarrah. Their people, have lived there for quite some time. They're a known entity in Palestine. And so when you have a group of 29 people and it's led and it's Black Jerusalem, right, that's going to raise some eyebrows over there. And when you got a bus or rather a plane load of folks coming off, and these are mostly Muslim people, men in kufis, women in headscarves, it's going to raise some eyebrows. So we knew that we were being tracked. And I think that the people here were like, oh, X is going to be posting this stuff. He's going to be, breaking down what's happening. Ain't no way. Ain't no way. It would compromise the safety of the people I was traveling with. It might compromise the people that we were meeting with. And also, I feel from a intellectual standpoint and a sociological standpoint, it's not mature and respectful to be dealing with something so nuanced and also so new to me. This isn't like Israel, Palestine, Gaza, Hamas, IDF. This is not the area of my deep expertise. And so I'm not going to jump into this acting as if I am aware of or a teacher on these points. I'm more of a learner and a questioner. But that said, I'm also someone who knows the playbook for genocide. I know the playbook for apartheid. I know the playbook for systemic oppression. And that ain't unique to that region. Like those playbooks are not unique. If you think that it's unique, then you need to understand history a little bit better. Um, I didn't feel safe posting consistently about what I was seeing. I certainly didn't want, like here in the US, we just put up the video camera and whoever is there ends up in our videos. And we don't ask for consent. We don't ask for permission. We don't blur out images on the back end. And there's no way that I was going to have a bunch of brown Palestinians um, um, put at risk because of the ways in which America gives free license to voyeurism, even when you're talking about issues of physical combat and force and oppression. So that's why y'all didn't see me posting a lot for the last couple of weeks. When I got back, the only thing I posted, quite honestly, in the very beginning was what I was seeing. And it was frightening to me. I posted like, "Yo, I see the missiles coming across. I'm scared. Like I see these things, and I've never seen anything like that." I got, we were trying to get all the people, especially some of the elderly women, off of our bus when we got to the airport. And I kind of took over a bit and trying to get the door. I ain't never drove no coach bus, so I don't know how to operate a coach bus. But we managed to get the doors open, but I couldn't keep them open without people holding them physically and me staying in the driver's seat to manage the controls. And we got everybody out, but then I got locked on. Everybody was gone. So now I'm stuck on this bus and I'm looking at these rockets coming over and I'm like, yo, this might be it. And that really shook me up. That really, really, really shook me up. And I had to press pause on my work at Justice Informed. I had to press pause on any teaching. I had to press pause on a lot of things to kind of process what we had seen, even having to flee out of the country, and having no flight, no promise of getting home. Um, I spent probably 7 or 8 hours trying to buy roughly 80 different flights, all of them not going through. I had a friend of mine who offered up his credit card. He's a billionaire, and that's a heck of a privilege to have a friend like that. And just said, whatever it costs, just get home. I mean, I was trying to find flights for $1,000, no takers, just to get to the next country. I wasn't even trying to get around a flight home. I was just like, can I get to Europe? Can I just get out the Middle East? Um, nothing. $1,000, $2,500 for a one-way flight, $5,000 can't get a flight, $7,000 can't get a flight. Money's not the issue. Like nobody can get out.
So
Um,
tell me this. So, because I'm coming in again, I'm not an expert on this at all. When I hear about tragedies like this, and I hear that we have people who are American citizens there, my question is then, how do you get out? Is it that story you said where because you had two white women with you, they let you through,
that's
or
on
is
the
it a little bit more
ground level. That's on
Okay.
the ground. By the time you get to the airport, it don't matter. It don't
Oh, okay.
matter. The
Okay.
airport, once you're in, that was to get in. That was the street issues. The street issues all around. We had issues with color and race, and I felt like I was in. I know people are gonna be upset with me saying this, but the reality is it's very. It feels like the Jim Crow South over
That's what it
there.
sounds like.
Like it feels like the Jim Crow South walking through the West Bank. The divisions between the Israelis and the Palestinians, the ways in which Afro-Palestinians, people from Chad and Nigeria and other folks who have been in the area for 2, 3 generations, like the way that they're treated, looked at, bumped into on the street, disregarded, like it's real. It's very real. And I saw it with my eyes and I experienced it with my skin. And I can't forget that. But that's the street side. Once you get to the airport, it's now a question of just everybody's for themselves. That's what it was. It was several thousand people. You hear the air raid sirens, you run back into the shelter, and then you try to come back up to go to the gate to see if your flight's taken off. Like that, it's just bonkers. Um, you know, um, but if you don't have a flight, there was just very little hope. My flight had already been canceled before I got to the airport. All my companions' flight was still valid. Now I had already been looking for a flight since we left Haifa in the north, and so I had 2 hours on the bus to kind of like check and look and see where where I could get a flight. Um, and there was literally just nothing there. There's just nothing there, bro. Like it was. So by the time I got to the airport, I already was like high suspicion. My suspicion level was super high about the probability of any of us getting out of there. When I thought about the airspace and the fact that rockets are in the airspace, what kind of planes are going to be taking off when there's rockets in the airspace? So do you want to be on that plane? I don't want to be on that plane. Right? Like you can't really take the streets. Like when people are taking the streets, the realities of, like I said, the street is different. Like taking the road is different. This brown skin, and especially for my friends who had, kufis or headscarves, like the Muslims, like it was very, very difficult. And a lot of people right now are talking about Gaza, and and they're talking about where the war is happening. The reality is the social control and economic suppression is happening in the West Bank as well. And that's what people aren't looking at right now. That's where we spent most of our time. And the daily indignities that people were facing already that we were witnessing, I can only imagine how much they're heightened now. Now that Israelis are being killed and Palestinians are being killed, and individuals may want to say, like, you know what? I see a Palestinian. We saw that here in Illinois in Plainfield. A man stabbing a 6-year-old 20 something times, stabbing him to death and stabbing his mother, because they were Palestinian, because they were Muslim. Like, I can only imagine what that's like right now. That's why my heart breaks for those folks who are there. But for those of us who are American citizens, we had that privilege of being able to try to jockey, because that's what it was. We were jockeying for seats on planes. I only got a seat, one, because I never went to sleep that night. I just stayed up going to every single desk I could go to, every single airport terminal I could find. And when my guy came in for his flight at like 4 in the morning, um, I was able to, I found him. Somebody put it in the chat like, yo, that tour guide is here. And I was like, that's definitely not a tour guide. That's a billionaire owner of a major American corporation. But he had given us a tour while we were on the trip. And so I think they thought he was just a tour guide. But I asked him how he was getting out. And he was like, oh, I'm going with El Al. El Al is the national airline of Israel.
Mm.
I had never even heard of El Al. No one on my team had ever heard of El Al. He said they had already booked through El Al previously, so I immediately go to start investigating. El Al's not on anywhere near any of the desks that I've seen. United, Air Canada, Air France, Turkish Airlines, none of that. I ain't seen no Air Al. I've been here for 6-7 hours. So I go into this like back way upstairs and down this corridor, and there's
Mm.
El Al. I get to the desk, and there's a ton of people who, you know, they were mostly Jewish, trying to get flights out of Israel, out of the Ben Gurion airport. When I saw that line, I then started thinking like, man, I remember what we was experiencing on the street. I don't think that this black man's about to get a flight if all of these Israeli nationals or Jewish people are in line. You know, I didn't think I was going to get a flight. So I went online and I just started looking at all of the different site locations that it flew, and just literally, I would just click it like, you know, Berlin, Paris, London, wherever they flew, I just clicked it, put in my credit card information, tried to get a flight there, just kept cycling through different cities, cycling through, and then Amsterdam hit. And I was like, oh, okay, okay, I got it. I don't know. The flight was taking off in like an hour. I had to get everything checked. I had to get everything moving. But that was also one of the last flights that left at that first day of the war. And it was tough, man, because the flight, you know, every third seat was empty.
Mm.
And it made me just furious. And I'm like, how? There's thousands of people in this airport. We're all fighting for a seat. We're all fighting for safety. And every third seat, basically, is empty. You know, my friend who got an El Al flight for later that day, she got out and she said the same thing. They're empty. And what we were told was that, you know, Israel was trying to call in their reservists from Europe. So they're trying to get as many flights as they could to Europe to get Israeli nationals back to Israel to fight in the war. But regardless, just the visible experience of seeing all those empty flights and knowing how many people couldn't get out, it infuriated me. And you know, getting to Amsterdam and, you know, that just landing there, getting out of the airspace was like, it felt like just salvation. Like it really did. Like soon as we hit, you know, 37,000 feet, I was like, I don't think the rockets can get this high.
I can't imagine that feeling too, bro. Like once you flying and
Bro,
you probably in the back of your mind,
terrifying.
people already anxious when they flying.
Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Terrifying. It's yeah, so that's why by the time I got back, man, like every time I mean, when I landed in Chicago, man, I just kind of collapsed and went to sleep, woke up the next one. It was the first day of my life I ever woke up crying. And every day thereafter, I couldn't really move much. I couldn't really think much. I couldn't interact with, you know, I'm the CEO of Justice Reform. Like my team, I got a whole staff, like, you know, it's the immediate desire for me to speak up, speak out, or to perform were immediately thrusted on me. And I was just so thankful that I built a team that already knew they were already emotionally and psychologically and professionally prepared to welcome, you know, their leader back in and to create space for care and time for me. You know, my head of impact had already been helping to run the company in my absence while I was in Palestine. So I just told her, I was like, I need you to kind of keep the reins for another week. You know, I don't know what I can give to y'all right now. I don't know what I can give to myself. And I've been laying low ever since. I haven't been reading all these Instagram posts. I've just been praying and kind of laying low. And really just thinking about the folks that are there and trying to process through some of the things that we saw, you know, watching an elderly Black woman on our bus, you know, screaming prayers as we're trying, you know, she was disabled. We're trying to get her down the aisle to get her off this bus. So if something hits this bus, she ain't on it. and I can't, like, I just keep seeing her face. I was sitting in the driver's seat. I just keep seeing, I turned around. I just remember seeing her face and just screaming, um, her prayers as she was, being really pushed and guided. Um, and one of the doctors, this one sister, a mother who was just out on the street. A lot of people just had dropped down on the ground trying to take cover. She got up and handed off her child to one of the women on our trip. To see it, to have a mother put her baby child in the hands of a stranger to run. Um, yeah, man, it was. I think all these people out here chest beating about war. I've seen these memes, these, the conservative memes. They're like, they showing pictures of the F-18s and the planes, the war planes and the ships. And they're like, this is why America doesn't have health care. War, we're strong. And I was like, y'all don't understand what it feels like, sounds like, and smells like. Y'all don't understand what that feels like. You don't want to hear what that sounds like. You don't. You don't want to feel that feeling of even the survivor's guilt of being the one who got a flight and all your friends are there and they're locked in the country and they can't get out. You don't want that feeling. That feeling when you get home. People who send me DMs, you deserter. You left those people and you don't want those DMs. Like, people, they romanticize war, they romanticize pain. That's one of the reasons why I try to lead with love, but I also come off, I think, a little strong, is because as somebody who's been shot at, who's been in car chases, who's been beat within an inch of my life, who's been attempted to be stabbed, people have tried to drown me twice in my life. Like, I've come so close to death so many times. I know most people don't want that smoke. I know that. I know that for a fact. You don't want war. You romanticize it. We don't need war. We don't know how to love each other. You don't even know what it feels like. And I was only in there for a day. People are still there. Regular, everyday people. It's just wild to me, man. People are talking. It's sort of like the dude in the hood, just man, I'll do anything, and in the moment of the timing for everything, you ain't doing nothing. Like, you really don't have it. You thought you might, but you don't. You're not that person. You're not. And even though, for me, like, I've always been a run into the fire type of man. When stuff pops off, people beating down shorties, I run in. When I remember seeing a woman getting, beaten on the corner over there right outside of Henson Elementary on the west side of Chicago, man, running over there. My shorties came over, told me what's happening, running them 2 blocks, trying to get in the middle of that and almost losing my life, trying to break up a domestic situation, right? Like, these folks were sitting on this bus and my head is just like, all right, get everybody out, get everybody off. And then I get locked in, everybody's gone. As a person who runs in the fire, I don't think most people like the heat and they romanticize the heat.
Mm-hmm.
We, three of us and Dion, we're trying to fight so that we don't have the heat to run into. That's what the work of justice is. I'm trying to restore the social contract and heal the social contract and make good on the fact that we said we was going to love each other. That's what we're trying to do so that we don't get to these types of situations like I just got out of that I'm still trying to heal from. That's probably going to last me the rest of my life. We're trying to prevent this stuff.
You said something, Xavier. You said we don't need war. We just don't know how to love each other. And one of the things that always comes to mind to me when I see the world is the belief that we will have a need for war makes it a reality. How self-fulfilling it is that the only way that we can solve our problems is kill each other. That the moment we internalize that belief, it becomes a necessity. The moment we say the only way that we can live is if these people die, then somebody's got to die.
Yeah.
Our inability to fully humanize the other, our inability to fully humanize the other is what makes this sort of violence inevitable,
Yeah.
and has throughout time. I'm curious as to where your love lives right now, because I know you're a man who's always been led by love and called to love. Where does your love live in this moment?
This has been one of the strangest moments for me in my life. I'm just gonna say, um, because loving myself feels very selfish. Um, Making space for myself feels very selfish. In the face of like people who I walked with for weeks, people who gave of their time to show us their home. Like that's where my head's at. It's at the place of the Palestinians, the Israelis, um, the people who welcomed us, who can't leave, who aren't able to leave. Um, at the same time, um, I don't feel like myself at all. I haven't. You know, yesterday I was in bed until 5 o'clock. I was working. You know, typing, taking my Zoom meetings. But for the most part, I was just locked into this space. Um, and so where does my love live is an important question that requires a question of the emotions that I'm feeling as I try to consider love. My life verse is actually from the book of James in the Bible, and it's consider it all joy when you find yourself in times of tribulations. And then it finishes, there's some more, but at the end of it, it says, and let patience have her perfect work. Um, and I'm trying to be patient with myself and not let the way that I've loved the world that people are accustomed to and asking of me to deliver on, like speak up, speak out, say this, show up to the march, do this, do that. That was for a season and a readiness that this experience has shocked me out of.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to love myself enough to not feel ashamed for not running in every time, this time. And to feel so equipped and challenged is something I was talking to my girl about the other day. Like, I am, I know I have a lot of talent. I know I have a lot of gifts. Um, and I'm thankful for that. What I also think about is that that can be activated at any time, that I can be activated when I'm ready again.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't go away. The God-given gifts that I have and the skill that I've built from the talents that he gave me, they don't go away. But they have to be kept safe and they have to be ready for each moment. And each moment is different. So I'm just trying to let this moment kind of wash over me and to remember that there are people who have the energy to be active and to be activated and trust that. That's the spiritual principle of co-laboring, to know that you are not always to carry the burden. It is others' responsibilities, and it is in their time of activation. It is your time of rest. I've done quite a bit in my life, and I've had to repeat this word over to myself the last week. Xavier, you deserve rest. You deserve rest. And that's a very difficult thing to process when you're always the one that runs in. That's a hard thing to do. And all the people like, you know, X, you got to take care of you. I think, that's an easy thing to say. That's like, yeah, man, we gonna fight them people. That's an easy thing to say. That's a very easy thing to say. But doing it can take everything you have.
I think
When you say, go ahead, E.
I was just gonna say, like, that's a reoccurring conversation we've had is like, prior to this happening, how do we rest, you know? And this, like, when this news came out, again, speaking from the perspective of somebody who was over here, like, first off, I think we all can say, like, we didn't know you were still there, you know?
I
Like, it
realized
was,
that a lot of people didn't know I was still there.
I thought you was back, you know?
No.
And it was like, whoa, wait, he's still there. And just kind of like, I felt like, again, as a person who likes to help people, I felt helpless because, for one, I have not studied that conflict like that in depth over the course of my studies.
Yeah.
And understanding the complexities of it, and also understanding what our government does, and Like it felt like the things we fought for here for ourselves, the realization that, like you said, like it reminded you of what Jim Crow may have been like, that it's still happening.
Yeah.
And how far have we come if we fall through it, yet we still have government figures who still support that?
Yeah.
You know, like it's literally like, okay, we can't explicitly do it here, but we're gonna make sure it still happens there. And it's
Yeah.
wild to me because, like you said, the only reason some of this stuff can continue to happen is because the process of dehumanization has never ceased.
Yeah.
Like we still don't like how do you love, right? Like how do you find space to love? People don't look at us as humans. People don't look at Palestinians as humans. Some people don't look at Jewish folks as human beings, bro.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to comprehend, but it's like we have a certain level of comfort here.
Yeah.
Not that we know it's far from perfect, but I'm sure the vantage point you have now is completely different. There are people right now, bro. Like I was watching a video, man, where it was a lady it was a Palestinian woman talking in Arabic, and I was reading the captions about an experience she was having, and she was saying a prayer and everything. And I just I'm watching it and I'm listening and I'm in it. And then towards the end they showed I can't even, the children, bro.
Yeah.
Is the moment you view a people as inferior, the moment you view even your people as superior to others, the natural conclusion of that is elimination. Because if people are inferior to us, that means they're going to hold us back. They're going to mean us harm. They're going to stop us from progressing. They're going to be a net negative to the human race. The only thing that you can do once you feel that someone is inferior is to take action that's going to lead to their elimination, either immediately and over time. The feeling of yourself or your people as superior and others as inferior, it is in itself dehumanization. And once something is not human to you, you can have no concern for its life. You can justify any action that you take toward that group of people. And to see it, it's just such a widespread, and it's hard to be somebody who doesn't see the world that way and just see it everywhere.
Yeah.
And to see it normalized and written into laws and be a part of the way that we live our day-to-day lives it's a difficult thing. Of course, not as difficult as to experience it, but difficult to watch and know that this is where we are as human beings.
Yeah, I think we talked about this the first day, and Jamal, first I just want to shout you out, man, for coming through with a tray of 25 pieces of chicken for your boy last week. Jamal came and did a drop off for me, man. Dion showed up.
Where was the chicken from, though?
So we did Mimi's. You don't know about Mimi's.
Okay, that's on West Side, so probably. Okay.
That's a West Side. That's a West Side.
Thought y'all was gonna throw out Uncle Remus or something.
The chickenry is real. I'm actually doing with CityCast Chicago and Jacoby Cochran. I'm gonna be the West Side representative of the official Harold's versus Uncle Remus contest. So I'm gonna be out there on the West Side next week on Madison. Making sure that I'm breaking down the different tastes and textures of the Uncle Remus.
Man, Keith Lee already came through and settled that.
I want to get back to this point around the complexity of the issue and finding love in the issue. And I saw a comment in there, somebody saying, I don't know a lot about this. And I think one of the things I just want to share about this, and this gets back into the topic of and we may not get to that, but just allying and how do we ally people who have not received justice. One of the things that I walked away with from that experience in the Holy Land was a couple things, not one of, but a couple things. One, a deep respect for the difference between Israel as a nation, Israeli as a nationality, Jewish people as a culture, or Jewishness as a culture, Judaism as a faith, and Jewishness as a people. Those are all very, very distinct things that I think a lot of people here are just tossing around and are assuming the same, and they're not the same. They're not the same. When you go over to the question of Palestinians, there are Palestinians who've been there for generations, like the Nashashibis, right? The Nashashibis were there during the Nakba, and the Nakba was the moment in 1948. Yeah, well, it's even that, like asking the Israelis, is it the catastrophe? They'll say, absolutely not. It's the birth of our nation.
Mm.
It's the great joy. It's the first time we were made visible, and it was the pathway to being made whole on the earth and having land. Like that's what they would say.
Man.
The Palestinians would say 750,000 of us were displaced in a week. Hundreds of thousands of us were killed. What is order to the spider is chaos to the fly. And this is the challenge that people are now jumping into from America. And then the way in which we experience Jewish people here in America. For people of color, it's very complex. There are many Jews who would not say they're white, and there are some who would say they are. When they engage with a lot of Black people specifically, who don't look at the question of faith or culture or nationality and these sorts of things, they're like, look, the big issue here is, are you able to opt into whiteness? The Italians did it. The Irish did it. You're not just are white in America based on your skin. I mean, the ability to pass is real, but you also have a choice to opt into the tactics of white supremacy. You have an option to opt into the tactics of whiteness, and that's different. And for, I think, many Black people who have experienced what we would say are white people, who would say they are Jewish people, they're not understanding, I think, when they're asking us to ally, that they are acting here in America primarily as white people, which has been the beneficiary not only of Black labor and production, but of the exploitation of our very bodies and stories. And even when you act with neutrality in whiteness, it is seen as a disavowalment of the importance of the humanity of Black people. This is very complex. But if you tell Jewish people sometimes, and I've had this in some of our trainings with Justin Form, like you tell Jewish people, hey, y'all are white. They'll say, no. There's Sephardic Jews, there's Ashkenazi Jews, there's different types of Jews. And it's not about skin color, it's about where we're from, and it's about the culture. And then you go to Israel and you realize they don't even consider all people who are Israeli to be down the line Jewish from a faith perspective. Some can't even come into certain areas, we were traveling with a rabbi who was not considered a rabbi in Israel. And I watched her constantly just feel and be so suppressed on that trip, because she's a rabbi, she's respected here in the US, but when you go back to Israel, they're like, hey, there's certain things you got to pass, certain ways you got to show up, there's certain identities you got to hold, tracing your family lineage back and this and that. And we just looking at it like, is she Jewish? You know what I mean? Like inside the culture, inside the nation, inside the national, there's a vast complexity. Now, that said, that's in no way to say that because it's complex, you shouldn't find or have your voice. The reason why I say we should have a voice and we must have a voice is because the tactics are not different from what we've already experienced here in the US. The tactics are not different. When I was walking down, I'm listening, and I'm in Sheikh Jarrah, and I'm at Rami's house, and his cousin is sitting there cooking for us on this open wood fire. It wasn't even a stove. It wasn't really a grill. They pulled it in there. And I mean, and we're sitting there, and I'm looking at this bombed out house that's been bombed out since 1948. When the Nakba happened, and they lost that, they didn't lose the property, they're holding the property. They're holding it because it's one of the last main pieces of land in the entire community that is Palestinian owned. And we're there, and they're breaking bread with us, getting an opportunity that less than 1% of the people on the planet would likely be invited to, or have the ability to have entry into. And so we're feeling super blessed, but I'm looking at this bombed out house, and I'm thinking about the story and how we just met Bashir, the author of the Holocaust and the Nakba, who dared to work as a Palestinian, a scholar and academic, with a Jewish scholar and academic, to combine the question of the Holocaust and the Nakba. Something that many Jewish people say, you can't combine those two. The Holocaust is so unique, so special, so different. You cannot say that it led to, in some ways, what we're experiencing now. And he dared to do it. We're sitting there talking with him, and I'm like, I'm hearing all of these stories. I'm hearing all of these things. It's increasing my complexity and my understanding of this. But at the same time, I'm hearing this complexity, and I'm also saying this is very familiar. the resettled homes, the
Yep.
the right to return that people that the Israeli government gave to Palestinians when certain pieces of land were taken. I was like, that's just Lathrop. That's just the Lathrop homes in Chicago.
Yep.
Going to the city of David, the renaming of an entire Palestinian tract of land, the city of David. It sounds beautiful. And you see the donors on, like, they have these big billboards that have the people who are funding that, mostly Americans, people like Jared Kushner, who are the major funders of the city of David inside this area outside of Jerusalem, right underneath the Mount of Olives, a holy place for Christians, a holy place for Jews. And you're looking at the carnage, but I'm like, yo, this land, the taking of this land, the taking of these homes, the assumption that they can come back, that sounds like the Chicago Housing Authority plan for transformation. This feels very familiar. Looking at the wall, like going into Bethlehem of all places, and going to the walled-off hotel that Banksy, the international artist, created, right across the street, this beautiful hotel, and then literally the other side of the street is this 20-foot high cement wall covered in barbed wire, sniper towers at each corner. And I'm like, how is this not the Texas border? This feels so familiar. That's why I said the tactics are not different. The tactics of oppression and suppression are not different. The tactics, and Rami said something really important at one of he was speaking at a university and we were watching, he said, America taught the world something when it invested deeply in chattel slavery and the enslavement of the Africans. America taught the world what was possible, the clearing out of land and the genocide of the indigenous. And at the same time, the building of a nation on the backs of the enslaved, of people of color. And at the same time, creating a narrative, as James Baldwin said, the innocence constitutes the crime. That the nation is seen as innocent and defensible in these acts. That should constitute the crime. And then we lean back as allies and we say, well, Dr. King said the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. But we have to ask ourselves, why the heck is the moral arc of the universe so long? Why does it take so long to be just? It's because of how we are and how we insist on being. And so I'm sitting there learning and experiencing and feeling the effects of this complexity, while at the same time, as a Black American who knows his history, who teaches his history, and is committed to anti-racist values, specifically anti-racism being a commitment against white supremacy, against global militarism, and against hyper-capitalism. I'm seeing these three pillars of sin, as Dr. King called them, play out in this land, and I'm sitting there as a Black man saying, this feels familiar. This feels very familiar. I've seen this before. I've felt this before. And I know what I would want my friends who don't experience it, don't feel it, and aren't a part of it directly to do that I can't do because I'm in it. I know what I would want them to do. And so I sat back and I was like, I know what I would tell an ally to the work of Black liberation in America. Now I am the one who needs to hear what the work is as the ally.
To me, bro, it was, man, first off, you said that so beautifully, as you always do. But like, it's wild to me, bro. It's like as a history teacher who focuses on our histories, and just history of oppressed people, and specifically in this nation. I was like, to see what a morsel of what possibly was happening to us or to indigenous people on social media is kind of what I was feeling.
Yeah.
It's like, is this what that may have looked like or felt like, and to see I had a feeling of just like, man, every government, Congress, president we've had has supported genocide, and
it's the only way to get the job.
And I hope that this brings an awareness to our people, because it's a manager position, and if this one who's whatever 40 whatever is like this one who was number 3 or number 4, that means they all getting the same manual playbook. You go to the orientation, you got to do the job like this. That was my frustration with teaching, because I wanted something different, but they was like, no, I got to be like this. It's like Andrew Jackson, Indian removal with
Yeah.
enslaved people, by the way, right?
Yeah.
It's so mind-boggling to me. And then we have people who again, bro, who claim to be in that to be in the DEI space or the anti-racist space, and they can't comprehend this because theirs is limited to a book they read.
I think part of that is also due to the difference. So when I was bringing up the difference between Israel as a nation, Israelis
Yeah.
as a nationality, Jewish folks as a people, Jewishness as a culture, Judaism as a faith. When I was bringing that up, partly the reason I was bringing that up is because the question of, and I'm just gonna take it head on because I saw it in the chat. This question of is and how does support of Palestine not necessitate a destruction of the Jewish people? I think that what many people are recoiling at right now is the tactics, right? The tactics. Um, the fact that when we were in Bethlehem, I ended up just shooting the breeze with some brothers on the street they turned out to be tour guides. And we started going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth about this justice for everyone. Does everyone deserve kindness? And he was like, hey, man, don't be upset at your country, man. Your country's doing the same thing that any country would do, is trying to win. So don't be upset at America, bro. You may be on the bottom of it, but, it is what it is. The world is a vicious place. Try to win. There's still that there, too, right? Right?
Man,
Like just win, just win. That's how some people are wired. That's what some people think life is and what work is and all of these things. Okay, fine. I'm the type of person who says, I know that's out there and I choose to stand against it. And that means I may need to stand against it with my very life and livelihood. Um, the reality is that you learn when you're there that in the region, the three main faiths, right? So Jews, Christians, Muslims. They before 1948, before Theodore Herzl and the idea of Zionism, they lived there. They were all there. They were already there. But the numbers were a bit more equal, and the question of domination was not so obvious. And the desire for what very much seems like replacement was not there. Um, and the ways in which even people talk ancestral, like talk about how their grandparents were in the 1920s and 30s and 40s and 50s, and how they related to people of other faiths and how they coalesced in the same community is very, very different. Very, very different. The desire to own land, there's a difference between sharing land and owning land. There's a big difference. And I think one of the things that the progressive left is crying out about is they're saying, hey, sharing land, we're here for it. Owning the land, that's different. Because to own something, you have to secure it. To secure it, you have to have weapons. To have weapons, somebody has to be on the other side of that barrel. So who's on the other side of that barrel? Housing, real estate requires security. But a home requires a family, neighbors. It's very different. It's a different way of living. Collectivism is not the same thing as rugged individualism. And what's being fought for right now is rugged individualism. What's being fought for right now, as I see it from the Israeli state, not Jewish people, Israeli state, is the desire to own an area. And I'm not saying that just based off of my ideas or some assumptions or some misguided things, or I heard this one thing or two things. I'm like, after talking to hundreds of folks on the ground there, sitting and listening and just shutting up for hours on end to just hear the testimony. And for us as Black people to say our job in this space, we can't necessarily activate. Like when we saw a bunch of cops running down some Palestinian kids, hundreds of kids just running down the street, and these police officers just at their throats. You go a couple blocks and you see these little brown boys on the wall, and these cops are just patting them down, guns out, guns on. You're like, yo, they're like 12. They're like 12 years old. You see that. And if you intervene, you can make it worse. Now, I know how to intervene in Chicago on something like that, but I don't know what that means in Palestine. And so I'm forced into this situation where my greatest value in the space is to witness it and to say I saw it.
mm,
And to say it's not unfamiliar, to consider it not strange. To say that I know these tactics. I know these tactics. I'm not imagining these tactics. I know these tactics. I wouldn't have worked at the University of Chicago if I didn't know these tactics. I wouldn't have built Justice Informed if I didn't know these tactics. I wouldn't have ran a multi-million-dollar workforce and economic strategy if I didn't know these tactics. I wouldn't have been brought in to be a head of fundraising and marketing and run all these programs in the North Long Hill neighborhood of Chicago, the most researched and one of the most bulldozed areas in the entire Midwest, if I didn't know these tactics. These are the same. This is the same thing. The people are different. The nuances are different. The history may be different, but the tactics are the same. I know how to get people up off their land because I'm one of the people that was gotten up off their land. Tactics are the same.
I would imagine in that moment, and I'm just again projecting, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine like whenever I'm out the country, it's a feeling of I know most of my rights in America, but I don't know my rights here. So I got to tread lightly. You know, like
And
you
that
said, you
part
want to
too,
jump
that blue
in, you want to do
passport.
this. It's like, and it makes
Only
me
goes so
think
far.
how much of our humanity is contingent upon what land mass we're on or what, you know, imagined boundary we're on. Because we can't fathom, like we have to pause for a second and say that's wrong, but you have that trauma response. You have to restrict yourself. If I do what I would do there, and we know, of course, we know
Yeah,
we don't have that full autonomy here still, but it's different,
no,
right?
it's different. Yeah,
It could be the end, and I think that you know, I know we kind of way past. Maybe next week we can have that full conversation, but I think what you alluded to is why one of the reasons why we have to care, because sometimes it takes for us to see it happening over there to understand what happened to us and what's still happening.
yeah,
If we are supporting what's happening and we say genocide, we're supporting what happens over there. What happened? What could happen here?
yeah.
I saw a video yesterday, bro. Not to get too far out, but it was a journalist, Tom Hartman, talking about how there was this somebody who worked within the government, or was it a consultant or something in the late 1800s, and he recommended to every president that you do not allow us to have universal health care, because if you don't give the entire country universal health care, eventually that will impact us the most and lead to our genocide within a couple generations, was his idea. So he made sure every president did not follow through with that plan.
Mm,
So when I see what's happening over there,
yeah,
immediate, right? Like
yeah,
missile, I think of the slow trickle over here. And it makes you
yeah,
ponder like, damn, we have to fight for the like basic. We have the money,
yeah.
but we still don't have the, like Canada got it. And I don't even want to say free. It's like, you know, taxpayer funded. Like I had a thought. It's like it's like if your mom gave you money growing up and was like, yo, go to the store, get the eggs, get the milk, get this, get that, and you came back with some guns.
Mm.
it's like, it's like,
Right.
it's like, little Ernie, what were you doing? I'm giving my government. I mean, it ain't like we,
I mean,
we were forced to, but I'm giving you the money. You coming
but
back
that
with
that
dead people,
on the
weapons.
other side, like this is the challenge, right? Like that's what Hamas was also doing. That's what Hamas was also doing, taking humanitarian aid and buying weaponry that is then being used on people who can't defend themselves individually, but also have one of the most powerful militaries. Like here in America, we do. Like this is that like complexity of that I think that people are jumping into and finding out the water's deeper than they think.
And the thing about it that I think people need to understand, especially being an American citizen, the justification to kill a Palestinian kid, an Israeli kid, is the same justification to kill my
Right.
kid. We don't belong on this land. You know, our government took this land. We benefit from oppression. We have harmed others by our existing in this space. There's no more justification to kill a kid in Israel or Palestine than there is to kill ours. But when people say that the oppressed may resist their oppression by any means necessary, that is true. But when they say that, they seem to only be talking about violence as the means. And violence can and has often been a part of the means of resisting oppression. But there are so many things that we need to be doing on our side right now in terms of pressuring our government to do the right things, pressuring our government to get a ceasefire right now, pressuring our government to stop funding genocide. We've skipped over all other means and we're just thinking about violence as the only way to achieve this goal. And because of that, we're we're not stopping the route towards genocide.
I think that when I was a kid growing up, you know, it was just I was born right before the first Intifada, um, and I didn't really have a concept of a lot of this. I remember being young and my father bringing a globe to my room when I was a little, probably like 5, 6, 7 years old, and he was pointing to the Middle East, and he was like, "This is where the war is happening right now. It's the Gulf War." Um, and I remember that was the first time I started thinking about that area of the world. And I remember in 2006 when a war broke out, and this was with Hezbollah. And I remember watching CNBC when I was at an internship. I was sitting there watching the TV in my office, and I'm watching this reporter go into this area, this bombed out area, and this Palestinian kid is sitting there just looking shell shocked. This is back when reporters would just walk up to people who just experienced these grave atrocities and be like, "How do you feel?" You know, like, and this kid had just lost most of his family. His, face is covered blood, dirt, and all of this. He's just standing in this rubble, and they ask him, what do you need? What do you want right now? And he just said, "I just want to grow up." And the first thing that I thought about was just how innocent and pure that was. And they were like, "Well, what do you want to do when you go? What do you want to be when you grow up? It's so great to hear you have hope." And he just said, "I want to grow up so I can be a soldier and I can kill them."
Yeah. We have
And
never
I'm
bombed
like,
our way to.
"You just made an enemy. You just made an." And I remember that's 2006. It's 2023 now, and I think all the time about that kid. I'm like, I wonder if he became that soldier. I wonder if I wonder if he's even still alive at this point. In the way that we create enemies, this is part of the challenge. It's in the tactics that we have. Like when y'all hear me talk about black hyper-capitalists and my disdain for them, the black folks are just, the Jay-Z, I know you're not about to keep renting why don't you buy the hood, the block that your mama renting, like that, like, Beyonce, the best revenge is your paper. Like, I'm like, you're just going to become the plantation owner.
Mhm.
You're not going to free the slaves. You're just going to hold the whip. You're not revolutionarily changing anything. And this is part of the challenge. This is part of the challenge. As oppressed people, we may have a felt justification for picking up the terror that terrorized us and the tactics of terror that terrorized us. We may feel a felt justification, but I do not believe we have a justification on the basis of humanity. I don't believe we have a spiritual justification. I don't believe we have a moral justification to it. And those of us who can see the difference have the responsibility to call it out when our own are practicing the tactics of terror, and our own are practicing the tactics of militarism, and our own are practicing the tactics of white supremacy. We have a responsibility to call that out, but we also have a responsibility to build what it looks like when we don't use those tactics and we're still safe and we're still prosperous and we're still together, to show them that what you're doing and what you're living is just a choice. It is not some destiny. It's a choice. And the same thing is true in this state. When I was growing up and we were talking about a two-state solution and all of these sorts of things, that was a conversation around sharing. That was a conversation around people coming together and saying, can we share the land? Because Jews have been there. They've been there for hundreds and hundreds of years. Palestinians have been there for hundreds and hundreds of years. And the same conversation that a black person has, that felt like when I ask black people, how do you feel as a real estate agent selling stolen land? How do you feel? Because that's what you're doing. And you
Can I?
can say, well, I mean, all of it is stolen. It's all, you may have a felt justification for that. I'm not saying you don't. I'm just saying you do have a responsibility to imagine and be creative, to not use the tactics that were used against us, and to subjugate another people of color that could not protect themselves for long enough, that experienced genocide. 120 million indigenous people were killed off to make the country that we now call the land of the free. Come on, be more complex than that.
So how do you make it clear to people when we see someone who seems to be representing a marginalized group that they are not fighting oppression, they're fighting to be the oppressor? How do we make it clear to people that they're
I don't
fighting?
think they see that.
Yeah.
I think part of it is they think that that's why I said it's not destiny. It's not destiny. It's not, peace is not some ideal Orwellian, like thing. Like, it's a thing we live for. We wage peace, just like we wage war. We have to be strategic about peace. We have to resource. We have to have scaled resources in that direction. We have to have a heart set and a mindset for it. We have to make books that teach children about how to do it. We have to fill our motivation videos and these sorts of things. We have to create poetry about it. We have to go to theater about it. We have to ensure that it's part of the ways we write our laws, that it is the ultimate goal and vision and outcome of our practices. Like, peace is a thing that you have to wage. It has a cost. It has a cost. You can say you don't want to pay it. You can say it's not yours to pay, but you can't say it's not possible.
I want to say this real quick because I gotta balance it. Then maybe Dion can take my spot because I see he jumped in. but it never escapes me, bro. Every day, especially living in the suburbs, I see it more prominently. I think because you can see the development, like the expansion, the cornfields, and a day doesn't pass where I'm like, oh, it used to be a bunch of trees right here. Oh, like they just paved over this whole thing. All these trees new. Like they just tore down all the trees and added this. You know what I'm saying? Bro, we was down in, what up, boy? we was down in Alabama this past weekend. I was a part of a rally to ironically help this black family who had their land, their land stolen, help them get it back. And it was turned to the University of Alabama, Huntsville. And the family was showing us where they grew up, which is now a business administration building, and where the well was in their family, which is in a parking lot. And there's like a hump in the parking lot where you can see. And one of the family members actually works for that college. And he was telling me that a couple of years ago, they found out that there was a grave, a mound for our ancestors, like right next to the library, and the bodies, like it was a hill. And it just made me think about how, like, you can only hide these truths for so long, Yeah. It's like, I think in this country, symbolically, we pour concrete over it. We killed them all off. And there's still mounds, right? Cahokia, Southern Illinois by St. Louis. We're going to pave over it. We're going to plant some new trees, the trees without the fruit on them. We're going to build some schools. We're going to make this society, this straight and arrow diagonal society, and we're going to act like nothing happened. We're going to start our history in 1776. And as I was saying what was happening there, it was to me like, that's what they trying to do. They trying to do what was already done here. And I every day, man, because one of the reasons why I have not jumped into real estate, besides the fact that I don't feel like I have time, I don't know, but I just, the complexity of it, like the landlord is the one that killed that 6-year-old boy. The landlord, the terminology bothers me. And it's like, how would if I can't get into it without learning how to do it equitably, I don't want to be a part of it. And I don't even know if I'm there yet. But I'm gonna have to bounce y'all. I'm gonna end on that note. It's great to chop it up with y'all. Dan, I love you, bro. Good to see you again, man. Bro. Likewise. It's been a while. Yeah. Hopefully we can. I don't know where y'all gonna go with this, but hopefully we can talk about this more next week with the Ally conversation.
Yeah, we're gonna have to run that back. We're gonna hit the text thread to schedule something soon. Maybe we can get it early on the week, like a Monday or Tuesday. Yeah. Dion, bro, it's good to see you, man.
See, man, good to see y'all, man. It's so crazy. I was in a meeting and I was with y'all the whole time. I'm like, man, this needs to hurry up. It was so important, But I mean, I'm thankful for you all because I think that these conversations need to happen. You know what I mean? And I think what these have been for me is a release. You know what I mean? Like where I feel comfortable enough. Because I think that's the thing. Also, is a lot of times we think the conversation is not happening because we don't want to have them. And what I've learned now is, I want to have the conversation where it's not about arguing. It's honestly about like having dialogue, expressing what I'm feeling, even, questioning if what I'm feeling is what I'm feeling. You know what I mean? And that's even directly, related to, what we're seeing with everything. You know what I mean? I think I can't ignore it. I can't ignore this feeling in my stomach that, I've been waking up and being, reminded of your experience, X, and then relating it to, I asked myself the other day, like, man, what if you didn't get out? You know what I mean?
I know, bro. I think about that all the time.
And seeing all of this, it's wild. But I appreciate you guys because, even in spite of, like me being late to the party, like, thank you guys for having a conversation because, it's not easy. You know what I mean? And I think like to have 4 Black men who we feel like all 4 of us feel it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's why, I love you guys because I don't ever have to wonder if you guys like feel that shift in energy or like feel like I just know. You know what I mean? I think that's why I don't even ask y'all sometimes, like, do you know what's going on? Like we all always know. And I think it's just this is unfortunately what we deserve. You know what I mean? We have to, face the fact that, if we don't do it right or try to do it right, you know what I mean, then we're going to find ourselves in a situation where a lot of different sectors and histories are converging into a moment of time right now, which is just after a pandemic. And,
Yeah.
it's just all of these things that are just really it's blowing my mind. But I appreciate you all. Seriously. Like, thank you guys for having a conversation because it's needed. You know what I mean? And this is why we started this thing,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, X, for being so generous in what you've been sharing and just opening up your thoughts to us. I know you got a lot to process, and you got, and it's not the end of it. I'm glad that you have accepted us to be a part of that, to be here to support. I'm glad to be able to offer whatever I can, be it chicken or an ear, so so I can be whatever that I can with you. I feel fortunate to be in connection with you and to feel entrusted to do what I can to help you through an unimaginable time. Thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate you. Really do. I appreciate both of y'all. I'm gonna save this to the page. Tag y'all in it as well. Dion, I know Jake gonna do what he do.
You know he gonna do what he do.
And let's get some early for next week to really talk. I think this conversation on allyship is important, especially for folks who, I know we got a lot of folks in Chicago tuning in. What's happening right now with the asylum seekers and migrant crisis, and how Black folks are having this conversation around this. The reality of Israel and Palestine, and that also being a germane conversation for people of color around the world. There's so many situations where we need to really understand how we ally and how we show up for each other. I want to encourage y'all. No, Dion, I'm not gonna do your job. How do people find us? Let's do that outro, Dion. Let's get that outro, bro.
I got you. I got you. Let me thank you for joining the Unsaid, which is, of course, the new normal. You can always, find us on every social media platform, the Unsaid. You can go to our YouTube, hit the link in the bio, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. This episode is going to be up in the next couple of days, and we're going to keep this thing going as long as that B don't be the end of him.
They're
And
like
it's the same
everywhere.
B. No, it's just one.
There's like 6 of them now.
Oh,
They got
six?
it's a problem out there. We couldn't even eat a chicken. It's a problem out there.
That's because he smells like coconut milk and
I literally I got so much shea butter on right now, bro.
I know. No, listen, bro. Hey, listen. When we was eating breakfast, I said, "Man, he smells amazing."
He looked like he smells good.
Bro, I said he smells mellow. I love it. Like I feel at home. But no, listen. Thank you all for following, joining along, commenting. Please, once we post, please share everything. Comment, tell us how you feel, because this network and this community is only going to get bigger, and we're trying to do it and build it out the right way. Of course, we're going to be here next week, God willing, and to have more dialogue around what we're doing. And of course, I'm going to invest in a monthly subscription to Shea Butter, because I feel like I got to get my weight up. I do. You know what I mean? I smell fine. I don't smell good,
brother. You ain't gonna find this one. I bought this shea butter from a brother selling shea butter at a stand outside of the Garfield Park Conservatory, bro, on the west side of Chicago.
Oh, that's the best. That's the best. Dude, I bought the best
Harlem number 9. That's the name of the sale. Harlem number 9.
Dude, listen to me. I bought the best incense ever from this place in Virginia, and then he named it Barack Obama. It smells amazing.
I love black people. Black people.
Dude, I was thinking about going for the drive, dog. I said I might go for the drive. But no, with that being said, everyone, please stay safe. Tell somebody you love them, and please, if you can, join us on this road, because we're just trying to figure it out. And we'll talk to you guys later.
Hit follow on the Unsaid Chicago. Hit follow on Dion Dawson. Hit follow on Jamal Cannon. Hit follow on Ernest Krim. We'll be here again. Y'all may see a couple more posts from me. I'm just going long form, by the way, y'all. These short little 10-second, 20-second videos, this Instagram format has never worked for me.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for the nuance required for this conversation.
Absolutely.
So, I've been just working on my writing and speak. I'm just gonna do some long form stuff, so be on the lookout for that too.
All right.
Absolutely. All right, gentlemen, stay safe. Talk soon.
Peace.